We're going to kick it off. Let's start with Joe. Roku Media.
Sure.
Roku is obviously a leader in the space. You're running the sports, the many things at Roku, a lot of moving parts. I wanted you to start off with the NFL, what your day was like today, and I think it's really important to talk about the way that content is being divvied up, produced in new ways for new platforms, new kinds of exclusivity. So tell us a little bit about the NFL show you were working on this morning.
Sure. My day started earlier than I generally like, which was Good Morning Football. That is a show, if people are familiar, it's on NFL Network for 2 hours, Monday through Friday, and then it has a 2-hour extension show called Good Morning Football Overtime, which is on Roku. And I went down to see everyone, say hello. It's great down at the NFL's offices. I think here by SoFi. I think maybe what you're referring to is the model in terms of how we got it onto streaming, because it's part, the core show is part of the NFL Network, and the NFL Network obviously has distribution deals with MVPDs, and they have certain thresholds of exclusivity for the programming. So what we were able to do is actually extend the show and do a 2-hour window. Has a lot of the same format and, day to day, a lot of similar stories, because Joe Flacco's going to the Bengals, and that's a thing. And as a Steelers fan, he's now surrounded every single team in our division other than the Steelers, which good for Joe. But the news sort of travels through the show, but then there are segments that are different. They had a rapper on the show today, Wally, but he came in for the overtime session. So the point being, trying to be innovative and creative about ways to bridge from linear television to streaming television, and there's a perfect use case or perfect case study for being creative and figuring out a way to let a show have its life on linear, but also extend it to digital, to streaming.
Awesome. Let's go one level deeper into the Roku Sports channel, which you launched last year. Tell us a little bit about the business model there, the partnerships, what your partners' reactions are to it, and what the goal is.
That's it.
Just those three things. You got a lot of ground to cover, right?
Sure,
you're ad supporter, you're ad free, you got everything.
Okay, so let me take a step back. So our North Star is, as a platform, very widely distributed, over 90 million homes was the last reported number. All sports are effectively on Roku somewhere, right? So as things move to streaming, the big challenge, and you hear this in the industry, you hear this from fans, you hear this from viewers, everybody. Where can I find the content I want to watch? It's a pain in the ass. I don't know where the game is. I'm a Yankees fan, and I'm personally not a Yankees fan. So somebody's a Yankees fan, and they're like, it's on 5 different services in 1 week. Where do I find all the content I want to find? Well, we set out to try to help remove that friction by building a aggregated sports destination at the very sort of platform level. You turn on your Roku once you see Roku cities sliding by. For those of us who like Roku City, and you're able to navigate directly into a sports destination. We call it Sports Zone. It's kind of an internal name, but the idea is that all sports are there. It's organized by sport. It's organized by league, and we have an NFL zone, we have an MLB zone, an NBA zone, et cetera. So there's live content, there's clips and highlights, et cetera, et cetera. We also have the Roku channel, which is our free ad-supported service on the platform. It's the #2 app on our entire platform, so it's very strong, significant engagement, lots of daily, weekly, monthly viewers, and we have some live sports in there. We have some sports talk like Good Morning Football. We have original sports content, and with the growth of FAST channels, and we have a lot, probably 35 or 40 channels that are focused on FAST. With that, we decided, let's aggregate the content that we have as a first party into a dedicated FAST channel to take advantage of all of that. So we launched the Roku Sports channel, and just, the idea of building a linear 24/7 sports channel that we then integrate into the larger sports experience. I'm going to stop now because there's other people on the panel.
Fantastic. No, that's great. We got a lot of time. We'll bounce around. Christy, I want to go to you. If you could tell us a little bit about Swerve. Go back to Swerve, what it started as, your pivot to combat, and then take us to the new iteration, which is going to focus on women's.
Sure. Swerve TV is about 4 years old. We initially started as a sports documentary channel, and it was doing okay, but we found that every documentary that we did in the combat space, or that we showed in the combat space, outperformed everything else. So we pivoted to combat about 3 years ago, thanks to Roku for being one of our earliest supporters. And once we pivoted to MMA and boxing, we also started doing live events. We've done more than 300 live events in the past year. And that also led to another step change in the growth of the channel. I've been in streaming for 10 years. I've been in news, sports, and entertainment, and live just drives tons of engagement and duration, and particularly in the sports space, as we all know, that's where it's at. And so once our Swerve Combat channel was doing really well, we found that there was demand for more women's sports in general, and we found that women's combat was actually outperforming men's combat on the channel. So we started a dedicated women's fight night, and that outperformed the other 6 nights of the week. So our second channel is called Swerve Sports. It's all women's sports. We are distributed on Roku, thank you very much. We just launched in the UK last week on Roku. We're also in the USA and Canada. So we are taking what we've learned from combat and we're integrating women's boxing and MMA with basketball, volleyball, softball, gymnastics, you name it. And it's early days. We've been live for about 2 to 3 months now. We're also on Pluto and another half dozen distributors with the second channel. And we'll see how it goes. But it's very interesting to see how all of those sports are performing in this space.
Awesome. Also, so pleased to have Mike Chioditti on this panel of the Professional Fighters League. I think I got that right. Formerly was at the NBA. You guys are at a really interesting point in time with all kinds of deals coming at you in different ways. This is a panel on monetization. We're going to talk about all of it, but the media business really starts with these rights negotiations. So tell us a little bit about where you guys are positioned and the rights deals that you're going for and your mentality right now heading into the next year.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, PFL is the #2 MMA league behind UFC. We're about 7 years into our history. Done a, I think, really good job of building the product. Lots of tailwinds behind the category. Most recently, the Paramount UFC deal, I think, was a really big moment for MMA and really a pivot to the mainstreamization of the sport. The valuation was, in excess of even what UFC was targeting, and it was a bidder that most people in the industry didn't see coming. So now we're out there in the marketplace. We have ESPN as our domestic partner, but we kind of go region by region and try to partner with the biggest media properties, Stan in Australia, DAZN over in Europe. But now in the new kind of media landscape, we're in our final year with ESPN, so we're having discussions with all the various tech, media, fast platforms. We have the young male hard-to-reach demo. And if you just kind of peel back at a macro level, MMA has been kind of the growth sport of the last decade. I think really women's sports and MMA have been kind of the two sports that continue to see that exponential growth. And we're trying to do everything we can to grow our brand and really capitalize on the moment.
But I mean, new licensing deal that you're going to be working on, correct? In the next year? And you were telling me in the prep, everything you're doing now is geared towards getting the biggest.
Yeah, so I mean, we want to make sure we're in the last year of our deal with ESPN. So we are making sure that we are activating our fans across all the various distribution points to make sure we're kind of maximizing value and have optionality. So we relaunched our app last year. We're kind of doubled down on our fast strategy, and we'll be in the market talking to all the various distributors and tech partners.
And just comment a little bit. We talked about this, the UFC deal with Paramount. A show of hands, how many people are aware of that deal? So I think what's interesting, at least for me as a legacy guy talking to Laura Martin yesterday about the business, like the pay-per-view business was monstrously profitable, right? And so this is kind of an interesting thing where you just have a new player with a lot of money trying new things, hugely beneficiary. You're going to be a huge beneficiary of that. But I think it's still a little bit uncertain as to how that model works. And you had said some really interesting things earlier about whether that needs to be profitable by itself, because it's going to be serving so many other purposes for Paramount.
I mean, it's a great deal for the fans, right? Now there's kind of one home for UFC, doesn't require the pay-per-view model. It's probably a bigger risk for Paramount because that was a wildly profitable, the pay-per-view model was wildly profitable for ESPN. It's great for the fan. It's great for UFC. I think it's a big swing for Paramount, but it's an exciting time in the industry. It's kind of, again, it's a real moment to bring MMA into the mainstream, one centralized home. It's going to be a great case study for the sports ecosystem.
Awesome. We're going to dive a little bit into what works on TV, what doesn't, how does it work, how doesn't it, and I think I just want to make the point and then transfer this to you, David, that fighting is really simple to understand, right? I make a joke, like you see two guys fighting or two gals fighting, like as a guy, you have to stop and watch, right? And it's like, there's no problem with the rules. You were telling me earlier, one of the key things is to teach people the rules. You're right now head of Major League Table Tennis, building on your success with Cowboy Channel. So why don't you start there with, how are you thinking about Major League Tennis in terms of business model, in terms of what can make table tennis a visual sport? What are your top priorities?
Appreciate the question, and thank you all for being here. In order for a sport, in my opinion, to be worthy of productization, it has to do three things, actually four things well. It needs to be good live, as an actual live event, which Rodeo did successfully. It needs to be good on a couch, and it also needs to be good on your phone. All Tier 1 sports do this very, very effectively. If an emerging sport or an underserved sport doesn't have really these three qualities, I think it's important to actually focus on the sport to build that up before it really requires, before productizing it. After we sold the Cowboy Channel, I received an opportunity for Major League Table Tennis, and I thought of it as ping pong, a participatory sport, and until I actually had a meeting with your former colleague Charlie Beal, who said one word to me, Asia. And I looked at the opportunity in a new light, thinking, it was learning that it was the 7th largest played sport in the world. I went to a live event, and it was incredible. It completely changed my my opinion of it. But there is another factor that, of sort of a fourth dimension, which you guys lucked out in, which is peril. I mean, baseball, football, they all have peril. I mean, hell, I stopped playing Little League after getting hit by an 80-mile-an-hour pitch, and I was done. In table tennis, it's there. I mean, there are injuries all the time, but it's not as apparent in combat sports. But I guess if there's a takeaway, it's should you build, and why? Does the audience, is there an audience for it? And what we noticed with table tennis is everybody was putting out the content for free on YouTube. So we figured that consolidating it in one place actually gave the audience value. And just we always kind of approach the audience with respect.
But let's poke down on that a little bit in the context just to talk about ad-supported versus paid media. I know you did a lot of really good work, if you could tell folks the story at the Cowboy Channel, making some decisions that had to do with the money you were able to take from consumers versus trying to broaden it out and make money on the ads. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Oh, hell yeah. I'll be the first to say that the streaming ad market is bullshit. I really think it is. I mean, I spent 2 years trying to get SSAI implemented across the Cowboy Channel. Magnus, right there, called me and said, do you need help? And I was like, no, I got this. And he went, you will need help. And I called him 6 months later and said, help. This is very, very, very hard to do. Once we actually had it up and running, I mean, we were making 50 grand a month on a good month when we were making 16, 17 million dollars a year in subscriptions. It's fast channels in general. You can spin up one for 10 grand. I mean, you and I could buy content on quilting or whatever the hell we wanted and spin one up, meaning anyone can do it. So you have a proliferation of content a linear timeline, which is antiquated. And let's face it, a linear timeline is only good for two things: live sports and breaking news, nothing else. You don't need Seinfeld on a linear timeline. So you have a proliferation of all of these channels, and because of that, CPMs are $7 and you give half of that away. I mean, if you're Roku, it makes tons of sense because you're the one making that money. But if you're a content provider or a sport, I mean, run.
We don't keep all the money, just to be clear.
Half? But, no, I mean, for you guys, my God, you're a bank. I'm impressed.
So great stuff. Obviously, business models are across the board and fluid. I'm going to you on this one. One of the things that you guys do really well is the multi-view feature. You got Fox 1 now pitching D2C. You got ESPN pitching D2C. How important is multi-view to the future of those apps?
I think I'm going to bounce on what David said. Like, there is such a proliferation of content. It's everywhere, and I think customers are now looking for a differentiator more than ever. People need a more engaging experience, and I think everyone's expectations of what a good experience is has changed. Especially younger audience, they want something that is personalized, that is tailored, so that touching on SSAI. But also, there needs to be a wow factor. There needs to be something different that will drag the customer to watch that specific channels. And I think multi-viewers is something that is gaining popularity and allows you to watch either swap between different contents or have multiple contents with picture-in-picture. You'll be able to do a lot of cool things. And it allows you to basically select what you want to watch. And I think this is something that brings a lot of value and is a key differentiator: reduce churn, grab more viewers and reduce churn. And really invaluable in this time where there's an ocean of content and no one knows what to watch. And if you know my favorite sport, I can watch, that angle that I want where I can see my team and I have a dedicated commentary. So if you have, like, I don't know, an NFL game or a hockey game and you have your commentary from your team and you can watch it with the main feed, those kind of things can be like very strong differentiators. And I think that's where Ateme comes in. We have a strong history of really trying to push the boundaries of what the good customer experience is. Historically, for example, I think we were the first to bring low latency streaming to wide audiences with Canal Plus in France more than 10 years ago. And then more recently, I think last year, we tried to experiment with immersive and then had one of the day one partner for AR with the Apple Vision Pro. We had the Disney Plus content was processed by Ateme. So we just keep pushing the boundaries and make sure that we enable good customer and user experience in streaming.
First, big fan of your products. But let's be frank, multi-screen viewing, I don't think anybody wants to be a technical director. However, for betting, and it's incredible. I mean, if you're a degenerate gambler, being able to have, like your fantasy lineup automatically selected, like what was a company called Maestro is doing that's powering ESPN, where you can actually feed it your season-long fantasy, and it will choose the actual images, I mean, the video streams based on, what you're watching, but also who's in your lineup. I mean, that's incredible. And especially with low latency, I mean, you're onto something.
Exactly. It's a combination of low latency and then someone will find a way to make a buck.
Yeah, go.
No, I would just say that multi-view has a lot of different aspects to it, to your point, and it's interesting to look at it as you can have multiple views from one event, you can have multiple events from within one app, or you can have multiple events that are in different apps, and trying to put all of those different pieces together and do it client side, where on a device or on an operating system or whatever it might be, you're letting people choose, as opposed to you're compositing on the server side and sending it down. There's a lot of different complexity there and a lot of different use cases, and I think some of them have more rights issues than others. But a lot of it, to me, is twofold. One is trying to make viewing and streaming as easy as it is in linear, right? It's one of the challenges. You're sitting there on Saturday afternoon watching college football in a linear environment, you can switch back and forth pretty easily. Streaming can be challenging, so that's one of the things that we think about and we're trying to address. And then the other piece of it is just trying to go beyond what the linear environment could provide and add interactive features, personalization, other revenue streams and opportunities that are layered onto the experience that go beyond what linear can do. So it's kind of how do you meet the expectations that people have in linear, and then how do you exceed them in streaming?
I think it's a great point, and multiple architectures are going to come about, and then we're going to feel out how the users experience that, and then we're going to have second-order effects like advertisers saying, wait, I'm only on a quarter of the screen, and there's a ton of that. So there's so many interesting things. One of the dimensions that I think is pretty interesting is the idea of branded content. I'm going to you, Christy, with the Steel Timber Sports example, where you're actually hosting, they are putting on events and putting it on your channels.
I describe Steel Timber Sports. Steel, if you aren't familiar, how many people own a chainsaw in this room? Okay, there you go.
I'm not allowed to own a chainsaw.
Thank you very much. It is a chainsaw manufacturer, an axe manufacturer. I call it a mini Red Bull. So Red Bull obviously is invested heavily in sports, and many different types of sports. And people who've never drunk a Red Bull know the brand from sports. Steel has invested in competitive wood chopping and chainsawing, and it's a very watchable sport. It's performing super well on Swerve Sports, our women's sports channel. I would say it's performing well for a few different reasons. One, it's pretty fast-paced, so it takes, I don't know, roughly 2 minutes and 30 seconds to saw a piece of a log with a chainsaw or to chop a log in half. And so you get to the payoff of who's the winner in the competition very quickly. And it's also fun to watch, and it's a little bit weird. So it has I don't know, this doesn't fit into David Guinan's hierarchy of sports that he's stated, but weirdness is good. Speed is good. We did some research on Gen Z sports habits, and as we were preparing to launch this channel, and one of the things that we're seeing is that they can follow more sports than older generations. They want to follow more sports, on average maybe 5 sports as opposed to 3, and they want faster-paced, action-packed events. So some sports which don't have a ton of scoring, have longer matches, are not doing as well. And I think we're seeing this with Major League Baseball rule changes, but we're also seeing in the women's sports space a lot of innovation in rules, in formats. We're seeing startup tennis leagues that are changing scoring methodologies. Some in basketball, volleyball, softball, they're all experimenting with different formats, I think, to capture the attention of younger generations who are looking for more fast-paced things. And I think that's where Timber Sports comes in.
Can I jump in on that real quick?
Go for it.
I mean, this totally makes sense because the shorter form is TikTokable. I mean, if table tennis, same thing. I mean, you have an incredible, just a sequence of series going back and forth. It's all over TikTok, and that's what I mean about the phone aspect of it.
Yep.
Whereas longer form doesn't play into that, but MMA, everything you're working on, is perfectly suited.
One thing, I would add to, if you may.
Go for it.
Sorry. And this goes off of what you were saying as well, David, is another element to me in terms of what makes things compelling to watch from a sports perspective, live. Compelling in terms of I can watch something and tell that they're much better at that than I could ever be. Right. And there's not every sport, which I think, recreational sports a lot of times, like, yeah, it's cool, it's fun to participate. I'm not going to name them, so don't ask me to. But that aren't as exciting to watch because you can't really grasp how good they are. So table tennis,
I mean, you can say pickleball. It's okay.
I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
No, but listen, this is a great segue, and I'm going to you, Mike, on this one. I think you had some really interesting thoughts on this particular element. I guess we did talk about pickleball. So I mean, we talked a little bit about the nature of the sport. We've hit this a little bit, but you're showing a lot of stuff in PFL. Is one of the original fast channels. You were on that deck for a long, long time, and you were telling me about the fact that it really draws viewers, partly because of the demographic, it's younger viewers, but also because who knows who fought 3 years ago. It's still very uncertain to me right now as I'm tuning in, correct?
Well, I think that's right. MMA is such a new sport. So even if you go in the archive, it's only a few years old. The broadcast quality is really compelling. So you don't necessarily know if you're watching a fight that was from last night or a few years ago. And fight fans, just the archive really plays, whether it's the short form on TikTok, whether it's long form. It's kind of perfect for the fast medium, where it's almost like great to have on at the bar, or as you're working, if you're an MMA or a sports fan, you know, kind of just on the side where you don't have to be super engaged. You know, MMA is a lot like horse racing, where it's long. It's a 5-hour window, lots of dead time, but for, you know, certain moments, you really want to tune in. Perfect for betting, perfect for short form content clipping. So it's very adaptable to consumer habits in different distribution channels.
Yeah, I mean, that brings up another great topic. I'm going to go back to you on this, is this idea of picture-in-picture advertising, and we'll go to you after Mike. But this idea that I can actually put in content ads using SSAI or SGAI. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing in Transmit and what you see happening with that going forward. Transmit is one of the vendors that you're working with to do those, right?
Yeah, and I'd even love to hear from Joe how you're thinking about it. So as we're thinking about how do we monetize, how do we, you know, create net new inventory that isn't disruptive, but maybe even additive to the fan experience, we've been thinking about picture-in-picture. So Transmit's one of our partners who allows us to kind of do like a squeeze back or an L bar, where you're still watching the content, but you're served an ad, ideally one that's, you know, integrated or has relevance to the content that you're watching. And we're working with them on what I would say is some of the smaller fast distributors who are maybe have a little more flexibility with those types of formats and letting partners integrate and monetize on content rights holders like us. I think, you know, with Roku and a lot of the tier 1 platforms, it's more of a walled garden, where maybe you can control more of the monetization and haven't necessarily let some of these vendors like a Transmit be as experimental with some of these new formats.
Well, we've certainly opened up our, you know, formerly walled garden environment in terms of, you know, we're integrating with a lot of different demand side platforms. And I think innovation in that space, for us, we've looked at picture-in-picture in different ways. I mean, obviously this is not new, right? You turn on linear television, it's there for a lot of different sporting events. And it's really just more a question of getting it to scale in a programmatic world, and the technology that's necessary to do that. And so we've talked to vendors and, you know, partners of ours like Amagi and folks like that, and trying to understand where they are in the development cycle of that technology. It's definitely something we're open to.
It goes to what we're talking about, a lot of what looks easy to the user. It's so much complexity in the streaming world, and so many different vendors and partners need to be working together.
In real time.
In real time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know it, but like, it's sort of the irony of like, yeah, those ads in a baseball game are the most valuable, but they're being like, first of all, sold way ahead of time, and they're being mixed in the master control right then. So it's like when you take it out into the programmatic realm, it's a little tougher, but that's why we have companies like Ateme. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the SSAI domain.
Yeah, I gotta thank you for that great segue. Yeah, as you said, there is a technical complexity that you have to address, and specifically when you look at advertisement. And I also want to connect that, you know, what you mentioned earlier. A lot of value in sport is coming from, you know, you have the weird factor or the entertainment factor, the clippability, but a big aspect of why people go to sport is also the personality, the athlete themselves. We've seen that through something like Drive to Survive on Netflix, really revived F1 through like showing the personality. Sometimes a single individual can even like save a sport. Something like, you know, Caitlin Clark in women's basketball really brought a lot of eyeballs to the sport. And people want to focus on one person. And we look at multi-view, like if I think of sport like golf, you would want to follow the whole, the main feed, but maybe you want to have a camera, or the second camera was just your favorite golfer, and then have that in a corner while something else is happening, see, you know, what he's doing with the caddy or something. But then you have a technical complexity here, because you have a main feed, you have a secondary feed, how do you guarantee that everyone is going to be able to have that experience? And everyone is working on different devices. Some devices have a single decoder, some device has multiple decoders. How do you guarantee that you can offer the same user experience on everyone, for everyone? And that's a difficult challenge, and I think there are technical solutions to this. We have multiple ways of doing the same thing, and this is where you need a technical expertise.
It seems like it has to be done server side.
It can be done server side, but then again, like if you're doing everything server side, then you
need every iteration of every possibility.
You can do either every iteration, or you can do some manipulation within the player to send different combinations. But then if you manipulate the picture in the player, then you have legal issues because you're starting to mess with content protection, and then that's a whole different can of worm.
I want to make a shout out. Do you guys have any questions? Raise your hand if you have questions. We'll get a microphone over to you, and we'll ask that in a second right here. But before I do that, let's go into a little bit of a different topic around. This is going to be a little bit of a curveball for everyone except for Christy. You are an expert in this space and have been forever, and know all about the dynamic of brands, channel brands versus the program that you line up versus what's in the metadata, in the grid. Tell us about how you thought about Swerve Sports, how you thought about branding it, and what you think about the importance of that versus the
so
content
glad you
itself.
asked, Brian, because metadata is really the perfect thing to talk about after lunch and while the people are thinking about going to the airport. I can't think of anything more exciting, but in my experience over the last 3 days, this is a crowd that can get really into metadata. Prior to Swerve Sports, I was at CBS. I launched multiple FAST channels there, as well as apps and other things. And I've been in TV for 2 decades. I've been working with cable broadcasters, streamers, on promoting what to watch to mass market audiences for 2 decades. Unfortunately, there's no PhD in it, and nor did I become a billionaire with all that I know about TuneIn. However, what I would say is there's really nothing more important than metadata, and I'm sure Joe can follow up on this. There really is nothing more important than the metadata describing the program, because that is what people connect to. I can say from reams of research and personal experience, if we were, at any point in history in the last 2 decades, if you were to walk down the street and ask people, what channel is 60 Minutes the #1 show on television for 45 years or whatever, what channel is it on? Nobody could tell you. I'd be hard-pressed to find probably someone in this room that could tell you, and you're all TV experts. So I think...
CBS?
I mean,
But
yeah,
there's
but I'm saying most people who I don't. Do you really want to comment?
No, look,
really
I think
don't
it's important
know what
I
channel
think I think it's different for different channels, and I mean it's true. You look at the guide, you got the tiny little thing on the left-hand side. Who can see that? What you can see is the big thing in the middle of like this event, this title, show, whatever it might be. But I do want to push back a little bit and give that to you, Mike, because you're building a brand, the #2 MMA brand, and so PFL is important to you. I think probably as much as like the names of the boxers on that. Tell us a little bit about how you think about branding and monetizing that in the fast space.
Well, I would just say one thing. In sports, ESPN is the sports brand that people look for in a channel guide.
Right.
I think what FAST has opened up is the ability to have single league channels, and that's very different from the paradigm that we've had in broadcast and cable over the years. So,
no doubt.
Yes, agreed. I think there's one more element to this. I know Mike, PFL's a partner, and we do really, really well with PFL content on both Swerve Combat and Swerve Sports. I think the factor that sports is moving toward, beyond the name of your channel, beyond the name of your program, is athlete-driven, athlete as creator-driven tune-in. I think the most powerful tune-in driver going forward is going to be the athletes themselves and their ability to monetize their promotional capability for tune-in is going to be an important factor in upcoming negotiations, my opinion. But I also think we're seeing this. And what Mike brought up earlier is that, why are women's sports and combat sports so fast ascending in the sports space? It's because those athletes as individuals have to work harder in social to earn a living. We know what WNBA players are getting paid right now and what they're fighting for. They can't make a living if they aren't good at social. And NIL is changing this as well. So I think that's going to be a massive change in the future of tune-in and programming.
Go into that and the social too.
Yeah, no, we think a ton about branding, even the name PFL. We say Professional Fighters League because not everyone would know what PFL stands for, but I think when you hear Professional Fighters League, you could kind of guess, even if you haven't heard of it, you could guess what this sport is. And, you know, this PFL really was the brainchild of our chairman 7 years ago when Endeavor acquired UFC for tons of money. And it was a sports property that didn't have such an intuitive brand. So the last 7 years, we've really been focused on building Professional Fighters League, PFL, #2 MMA League. We acquired the #3 player called Bellator last year, which was a major European MMA promotion. And now we're all rolling that under the PFL umbrella to really simplify to business partners and the fans, one property, one brand, global events with some regional kind of one-off events throughout the course of the year.
Let me double click a little bit on the fact that you guys are one of the original fast channels, if you will. You've been on that deck for a long, long time. Where is that in the conversations as you guys think about the rights deal, all this great activity, new investments and so forth? Where's fast in your head compared to some of the other things, social or linear?
I think it's essential, and maybe we have a different view here. If it's your primary distribution vehicle, you're probably under monetizing. But I think if it's part of your holistic distribution strategy, it really has emerged as essential and core. One, for monetization, largely for us, for VOD content that would largely be dormant. And it does well for us. So it's a meaningful revenue stream, but also just a brand awareness building tool, and we're currently in brand building mode, and then just general marketing and promotion. So we have inventory carved out of all of our deals where we're promoting, you know, tune in upcoming events or ticket sales, and you know, we're reaching millions of fans a month. So it checks a lot of very strategic boxes for the PFL.
I mean, as a promotional vehicle, I think there is room to take some of your even prime or subprime content where don't worry about the advertising dollars, take promotional space instead, and then use that to convert new fans to your SVOD product. I would definitely concede that point.
I would also say, like with Roku, with the Roku, the Pluto, the Samsungs, it is a material revenue stream for the PFL.
But my question for you is, do you distinguish between putting content on YouTube versus a fast channel? Because I kind of consider them almost the same. I mean, for example, WWE, the amount of money I learned that they make just on YouTube alone, I mean, it was like $25 million. I mean, I'm sure I have the figures wrong, but it was astounding.
We don't really, it's a very similar strategy between YouTube and fast, so it kind of allows you to generate more revenue without deploying a ton of additional resources, time,
Then we
expense.
agree, yeah.
And to follow up on what Mike was saying, what we have heard from promoters, leagues that we work with, is that when they have events on fast, they see more tickets sold for their in-person events. And so it's hard to quantify, and its attribution is probably difficult, but we have seen a correlation between the building of fandom with fast distribution.
Let's get a question in right here. You want to just shout out your name and the question?
Yes, hi. Bad delivery. Is. Thank you. You know, which proof signal do you trust most today? Ad decision? Would it be, you know, creative render? Would it be viewer completion? And if I could, you know, feed you a JWS signed receipt for that under 20, milliseconds, would that be something that settlement would qualify as settlement instead of logs or models?
Is that for you?
I don't even
I'm
I don't
not sure.
understand
That
the
may be a
question.
little too technical.
And also,
I think there's
can somebody wake Terry up?
Sarge in the audience somewhere knows all about the ad-offs there. So Sarge, right next to you. Okay. Well, go ahead.
You got it. You take this.
Go ahead,
He's
Sarge.
basically asking you if he could present you a way to verify or validate that the ad actually played as for a monetization strategy. And
I had
for everyone.
Again, we used Publica. We had verification that the ad did play, but my problem with SSAI is really centered on programmatic. We had an internal sales staff that was really good at selling linear broadcast, but teaching them how to sell this new thing based on a CPM model was a challenge. Yep. However, if you can do it, if you can crack that nut and really get a crack sales force to understand the platform, I mean, we could have been 10xing what we were making with
but
the
that
programmatic.
sounds like
so there really is an opportunity.
But it didn't sound like your problem was SSEI specific. It was DAI agnostic. It seems like you would have had that problem if you were doing SGAI or CSAI.
One more time, sorry.
Let's take this one offline. Switching gears a little bit, Joe. Between the time that you landed at Roku until now, it went from 0 of the major 3-league sports having a fast channel to I think all of them. Maybe MLS not because of Apple. I don't know.
Well, it depends on what your definition is, but yeah.
But
I mean NFL,
yep.
NHL,
yep.
NBA, MLB.
And speak
GTA,
to how they,
I mean, they all,
So, but speak to how they have been creative programming those channels, right? Initially just, maybe it's G League, maybe it's Archive.
It's evolved
They've done
a lot.
much more creative stuff. Tell us a little bit about what they've done.
They're evolving to program those channels as they're not just archive backwaters, they're program channels for a specific audience that, one of the things as I'm listening is, all of these channels, not fast channels, distribution channels, make sense because there's a fragmented audience out there and you're trying to aggregate an audience and different people have different viewing behaviors. We see things like, I've seen advertising decks where we're talking to potential partners and the lack of duplication between something playing on linear television and something playing on a fast channel is really high. It's like 90% of the audience is not duplicated in linear. Yep. That's a significant amount. And so as, look, fast is it's been a little bit of a gold rush over the last couple of years. So there's a lot of different entities putting up a lot of different channels. Some of them are single titles, some of them are single league, some of them are single purpose. But in order to stand out, branding matters. You still have to, if you see the NFL Shield, people click on it. But then the programming itself matters too, right? So if you get into, there's a brand promise that comes from these leagues. And when people click on those channels, it's fine if I'm going to watch the 1979 Pirates win the World Series, which was the last time they did so.
The family.
Yes, we are family. Is that the cue? Okay.
Just had to say it.
Willie Stargell. But you want to have a more curated experience that is targeted to the audience. Look at the NFL. I mean, they do a tremendous job. There's programming on the channel that is specifically programmed for that channel that is not found elsewhere.
Well, it's not a dustbin anymore of previous content, which is such a good thing.
I could sit here for hours, guys, but I know we all have to get places and we have to keep the schedule. So please give a big round of applause to my panelists, Christy
Thank you, Brian.
Tanner, Joe Franzetta, Mike Chioditti, David Guinan. I think I messed it up again.
Always.
And Francois G is the new name we gave him. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.